Hey guys, I'm Maddie and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna go over all of the books I read in the months of February and March. I realized halfway through March that I never did a wrap up for February, and by the time I realized it was too late. And now we are it's April 1st today, so we are officially done March. And I wanted to chat about the books because I got into a fairly large reading slump and I didn't love any of the books I've read. Spoiler, none of them I don't think were 5 stars. It was just kind of a very blah last few months. To be fair, school was picking up, so I didn't have a lot of time to sit down and read. But of course, the books I did have time to read, they didn't hit home. They were nothing to rave on about, unfortunately. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm making this sound so bad. Don't get me wrong, there were some really good ones and I had a really great time reading majority of them. But anyways, I digress. Let's just get right into it. The first book, I can't remember if I talked about it or not in my January wrap up because this one I finished at the very end of January. So I'm gonna talk about it now. And that is Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is book 1 of the Chestnut Springs series. And this was close. This was probably the best book I've read, and it was 4.75 stars. In my last video, I said that this was about a single dad because on the back it says something about a babysitter, like there's reference to a babysitter, and I just took that to be Summer, our main female character, was babysitting Rhett, our main male character's child. No, it's actually Rhett who needs the babysitter. Well, actually, and I quote, but Rhett doesn't need a goddamn babysitter, especially one with skin-tight jeans, a sexy smirk, and a mouth she can't stop running. So if I finished reading the back, I would have realized this is not a single dad trope. But it is a small town cowboy romance. So Summer is tasked with managing Rhett, who's a professional bull rider, kind of being his like PR agent because he did a bad thing. He dissed milk. He says he doesn't like milk. It's just funny because growing up in a small town, I am a dairy farmer. I could see how that would be a thing here. Like if a professional athlete from a small town, from a small farming town, made a comment about milk when they're endorsed. Sorry, it is very loud out. Everybody's driving the transport truck right now. If like milk was to endorse and like sponsor an athlete and then for it to come out saying that they didn't like milk, that would be a big thing. So yeah, anyways, Summer's dad is actually his manager, but Summer is tasked with looking after him for a summer, and obviously they fall in love. I love it. There was just so many funny little moments. Like there was one part where Rhett needs to tell himself to think of chicken shit so he doesn't come too early. It's just, it was a very relatable book. Not that I have to think of chicken shit, but just like the small town, the farming aspect, which I love. I loved the hat scenes. Those are my favorite. You wear the hat, you ride the cowboy. Yeehaw! It was a very fun book. Again, not really a spoiler, but of course in every romance there's like the third act breakup, which I just hate. I do not like them. But this was a very fun book. I love bull riding. I love rodeos. I love that atmosphere. So this was a very fun book to get into. And there are, I don't even know how many other books. The next one is Heartless. So like this series is all interconnected standalones. So there's Flawless, Heartless, Powerless, and Reckless. And they all follow different people. I think there's a brother, and the next one's like a hockey player, Rhett's friend or something. I don't really remember. It's been like basically 2 months since I've read this book, but so fun. A forbidden romance. This next book. Okay, wow. This next book is a love letter to whiskey, and this has been my most anticipated read for a good few years, I want to say. The paperback or hardcover copy is just so expensive to buy from Indigo, so I just never pulled the trigger on doing that. And then when I got my Kindle, it is on Kindle Unlimited, so I read it there. And I read the 5th anniversary edition, which has like an extended prologue and more from, what's his name? Jamie's POV. I gave this 4.5 stars. This book is very frustrating. It's like right person, wrong time. Somewhat spoilers, like skip ahead 5 seconds. There's the cheating trope. It's just very frustrating. Like they're so toxic. It's a very toxic relationship, and the whole time you're like, okay, what is happening? What is happening? Like, why is this going on? Like, why can't they just get over themselves? But they're kids. You follow them throughout. You follow Jamie and B. Jamie, main character, main male character, B, main female character. They like meet, and right from the beginning, shit hits the fan and there's like miscommunication. But this book does it very well. I think it was a little bit too long though, honestly. But yeah, you follow these characters through like high school, college, the early adult years. It does hit on some pretty like heavy topics too. Spicy nonetheless, but it was just too long, especially like the extended is necessary, but like getting Jamie's POV, it's just reiterating everything we already knew. So I did give this book 4.5 stars. It did live up to most of the expectations I had. Not that I had many going into it because I didn't really know a whole lot about it. Some parts were dragging on, and then at some points it was just like, okay, we're going through this again. But each time was like a little bit different, so it was still pretty engaging, and I flew through it. I think I read it in like 2 days. But it like, there was so many sweet moments too, but you felt like kind of icky, because not icky, that's not the right word, but they were like stolen moments that would have been sweet in different circumstances, if that makes any sense. Oh, there's this really cute quote. I read romance because it's fun to fall in love, and with romance books, I get to do it over and over. I get to be different types of lovers. I get to feel the heartbreak of love and the successes. Love is the most powerful and real emotion we feel, and I think it's sort of magical that we can experience some of the greatest loves of all time through books. See, this just like summarizes this whole book. I'm not sorry I kissed you, he clarified. My eyes found his then, but I'm sorry I did it when you weren't mine to kiss. Yeah, it was just very long, I remember that, but I loved it nonetheless, and I do think about it somewhat frequently. Okay, this next book I listened to on audio, and if you're new here, audiobooks and I have a love-hate relationship. I love them for the convenience, but I don't think I get as much out of the story as I do when I read a physical copy, and I think this book is a prime example, and that is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This is a dark romance. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a dark romance. I gave it 3.25 stars. I have the actual copy of the book, but I didn't sit down and read it. I listened to it on audio when I was driving to like school and work and stuff. I had an okay time with it. So we follow Cora and Dean. Cora's at her sister's birthday party, and then she goes home or tries to leave the bar where it was, and then she can't find a ride, and the only person she can get a hold of is her sister's fiance, Dean, and Dean and Cora do not get along whatsoever. They just don't see eye to eye. They fight, bicker on everything. They like poke fun at each other. So she's like, okay, well, I guess I'll call Dean. Dean comes and picks her up, and then they get kidnapped together and locked in some weirdo's basement. And they stay there for, I think, like several months. And then they form like a trauma bond, and then they end up escaping, and then they are left navigating the real world and how to go about life again post being trapped in a basement and being forced to do horrendous acts to each other. Basically, they're forced to have sex with each other. I wish we got more of the kidnapping. I don't know if this makes me sick or what, but I wish we got to see them more in the basement and forming that connection down there and just exploring that a little bit more. It kind of felt rushed through, even though it was a very pivotal point of the book. We deal a lot with the aftermath, which is good because there's a lot that happens there and there's a lot to navigate. It's just a huge chunk of the book where I thought it moved a little bit slow at points, where I wish there was a little bit more of a build up to it, if that makes sense. Cora's sister was so goddamn annoying. I don't even know what her name is. Mandy, that's her name. Yeah, and like obviously when they come out, things are not the same between them because they have been forced to be like intimate with each other and against their will, literally at gunpoint. And then Mandy's just not very understanding like why they are different and why they're not healing and why they're not back to how they were pre-kidnapping, and like still is set in her own way. She feels very entitled to me and I just did not like her. Even Cora was kind of annoying at points too, but obviously I've never been in a situation like that, so I cannot judge or comment on how they're healing and what their process is afterwards. But I felt like Dean was a big punching bag for everybody and I felt so bad for him, and like his trauma was never addressed really, and like it almost felt like he was just expected to move on and to be okay with it because he's a guy, whereas like Cora gets to grieve and struggle and go through all of that, but Dean just needs to be strong and be okay, which I did not like. Yeah, I had a fairly okay time with this book. Was not my favorite, and like their relationship just kind of annoyed me too. Like I was okay with them not being together. I didn't really care one way or the other, which is not like me because I'm a huge romance person and I always want the main couples to be together and to be happy, but with them I'm like, meh. It is what it is. If you're together, you're together. If you're not, you're not. Yeah, 3.25 book stars. Again, I don't know if I would have enjoyed this more if I had actually read it instead of listening to it. The narrators were very good. And we do get different POVs, I think. Again, that was another book I had very high expectations for and did kind of fall a little bit flat. Okie dokie. Next book is actually a short story, and so on Amazon, oh, actually you can do it today. On Amazon, you can get like early releases or like first of the month picks, I think is what it's called. And you can pick a book for free off of Amazon and get it on your Kindle. There's like short stories, different books. Anyways, this one, The Fall Risk by Abby Jimenez, was on there. So I chose that book because I have never read an Abby Jimenez book before. So this was my first and I loved it. It is literally only 82 pages long. And oh, it was so good. So we deal with Charlotte and Seth. They live in an apartment complex. There's like a little balcony or like a little open hallway that separates the two of them, and then there's like a staircase going down. This is important, so just bear with me. But then they're like two doors face each other, and yeah, so like split by a hallway. Anyways, the stairs to their little platform accidentally get knocked out, so they're literally trapped up in their apartments, and then they form this little friendship. They each have a friend who is single. They form little connections, and then we just get to watch Charlotte and Seth's friendship blossom. It's a very wholesome, sweetie little book, but Charlotte does actually have a pretty intense background and is struggling with something, so there are little, you know, there's like little like serious topics interwoven throughout the book, but overall it's pretty like lighthearted, super cute, super sweet. And for 82 pages, I got pretty connected to the characters and wish we got more of them and like a more full version. I gave it 4 stars. I did have some highlights. What did I highlight? You are very worth loving and sticking around for. This one I love. Sometimes the start of something good begins during something bad, he said. We don't get to pick when these things happen. Time to imagine a life together. So cute, so sweet. Loved it. Okay, next book is City of Bones, which is the Mortal Instruments #1 by Cassandra Clare. I gave this 3.5 stars. It's like a YA dystopian fantasy type thing, with like shadow hunters, demon slayers, a secret little world, a mortal girl entering this demonic universe, whatever you want to call it. Eventually Clary's mom goes missing, and then Clary meets up with these shadow hunters and uncovers and discovers secrets about her mom, secrets about Clary's own past, about her dad, about her family. Essentially, Clary's life is just shaken upside down and doesn't know where to go. This is a very highly talked about book series. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I think if I read it 10 years ago, I would have loved it a lot more because it is pretty YA and some of the stuff just like didn't move as fast as I wanted to, and the world building wasn't as captivating as a more adult fantasy, but I still loved it nonetheless. Okay, not loved it. I still enjoyed it and had a good time reading it. I do want to continue the series, but I just need a little bit of a break from it. There's this one part at the end, I'm not going to say anything because it'll spoil it, but I was like, oh God, like what? And then I Googled it and it's okay. If you know, you probably know, but if not, just know it gets okay. It's not as weird as you're led to believe. Yeah, I just don't really have much to say about this one. Okay, this was another fun one. See, the more I go through these books, the more I'm like, okay, yeah, I actually had a good time reading that, or that wasn't as bad as I remember it being at first thought. Anyways, that is A Little Too Close, which is a Madigan Mountain #2 by Rebecca Yarros. There's 3 books a part of the Madigan Mountain series, and they're all written by 3 different authors. So Rebecca Yarros has wrote the second one, A Little Too Close. Devaney Perry has one, and I forget who the other one is written by. I gave this I gave this 4 stars. So we follow Weston Madigan and then our single mom, what's her name? Callie, Calliope. And Callie is a single mom with a daughter named Sutton. I also really like that name. The name Sutton, it's cute. They live in Colorado, in a little mountain town. And Weston used to fly a helicopter for like the military or something, and then his brother needs him to come back to like help rebuild their ski resort, and Callie works at the ski resort as a photographer. And as fate, as chance would have it, they end up living together. They end up being roommates. And then it just goes uphill from there. Oh, it was so good. I was expecting something very, very tragic to happen just because Rebecca Yarros really knows how to play with your emotions. But this was a safe book. This was an okay book. I was not emotionally wrecked. My comment on Goodreads was, I was so prepared to be emotionally ruined. This book was actually very wholesome. It was just so sweet. The kid was pretty good, didn't really annoy me. The relationship wasn't really annoying. Weston doesn't have a very good relationship with his family, but Callie like craves family and craves that support system. So it was interesting watching their dynamic through that, watching them live together. They literally wrote out a set of rules that stays on the fridge, and eating ice cream and just chasing your dreams. And Weston, that's a man. That is a man. He goes to any lengths to be there for the people that need him. There wasn't really much I didn't like about it. It wasn't a 5-star book for me. It just didn't give me those feelings. Okay. This is my top book of the last 2 months. This is a book I cannot stop thinking about. Not 5 stars, but impactful nonetheless, and if you've read this book, then you know. And that is Split or Swallow by Lindsay Strobe. This just got traditionally published, and it is now called Kiss of the Basilisk. It's the same story, just different title and different cover. I originally gave this a 4-star, but I think I'm gonna bump it up to like a 4.5 because I cannot stop thinking about it. This is a wild ass book. I don't want to say too much about it because I think you need to go into it blind, but it is a romantasy. There is this prince guy that the girls of the village who are born in the same year as him are like going to this mountain and meeting up with the basilisks. They're like little snake serpent creatures who have like a human form and then like their snake form. And they're very sexual and sensual creatures, and the girls are trained how to be intimate by the basilisks, and then the prince will choose his match based on not just that, like there are other factors that go into it, but the whole premise of the book is them being trained for him. We follow our main character Tem, who's very innocent but very willing to learn. It is spicy. The quote on the back is "A Wild Ride" by Lindsay's mom. Yeah, it was a great time. It was impactful. It made me question a lot. The ending was really weird to me, and not in a good way. It felt kind of disjointed from the rest of the book, so that's why it wasn't a 5 star. But apparently there's supposed to be another book coming out that follows one of the other characters. Yeah, some of the scenes though, like, good God. The creativity on that woman. Okay, next book. We have 3 left. This one is a book talk book. You either love it or hate it, I fear, and that is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This was another book that I listened to on audio. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't really like it. It took me 3 weeks to finish this book listening to the audio version, and I drive most days at least 2 hours. Whether that's to school or to work, my commute is almost an hour one way, regardless of where I'm going. So I have plenty of time to listen, but I just couldn't get into it. I couldn't get into the world. I didn't really care about the characters. The narrators were great. I feel like the narrators are always what save a book for me and make it as good as it is, but like story-wise, I'm like, I just don't care. And the characters didn't encapsulate me. I was confused what was going on half the time and like why they were even doing what they're doing. Essentially we follow, oh sorry, I gave it a 3.25 star. I'm just reading my Goodreads review. It said it took me 3 weeks to finish the audiobook. Good times were had, but not good enough for more than a 3.25. Which fair. I see Saris Fane is her name. And then Kingfisher. This is the book with god-awful Kingfisher. Not him. He, as a man, great. Love him. He's one of the better characters in the book. But Kingfisher, of all names, why Kingfisher? They call him Fish. No, do they call him Fish or just Fisher? Can't remember. I think they call him Fisher. I don't think they ever call him Fish. That'd be kind of funny. They never call him King. But yeah, Kingfisher. Like Kingfisher being one word. Like that is one name. He's not Kingfisher. He's Kingfisher. I was just kind of confused half the time about what was going on. Again, I think it's because it did take me so long to read it, but like I just couldn't get into the world building. Like Saris was pretty annoying, I'm not gonna lie. And at the end of the book, like in one of the final battle scenes, I'm like, why didn't she do this in the first place? Like if I can realize what should have happened, then that's a sign there are questions to be had, because I cannot predict what's gonna happen in a book. I am awful at that. I am shocked along with every other character when something happens. I'm not one of those people who can be like, oh yeah, this is what's gonna happen, or this should happen, or I predict this. That's just not me. But in this book, I did. I called it. I'm like, why didn't you just do this in the first place? Like, why? Why are we dicking around and not just doing shit? Yeah, Saris goes through this Quicksilver pool and then is like trapped in this different realm and can't go back, and like her whole family is stuck in the other side, but then Kingfisher goes back. Oh, and freaking what's his nuts? Oh, I loved him. Carrion Swift. He was funny. He was the best character of this whole book, and he is like the side of a side character. Like there's not much focus on him, but I loved him. The times he was in there, he was great. I hope the next book focuses more on him. Which I fear it might not. Everybody's like talking about the ending, being like, oh, the ending. I don't even remember what happened. I was just so ready to be done this book. Again, it was fine. Like it was a good time because of the romance, the high-ish stakes, I guess, but like they didn't really feel that high to me. Okay, anyways, moving on to the next book, another 3.75, and this is Variation by Rebecca Yarros. This book again was kind of okay. It was just like felt a little flat for me. I wasn't super invested in the characters. They didn't really pull me in. We follow a Coast Guard named Hudson, and then a ballerina named Allie. Allie is like this prestigious ballerina. She's very famous. Her sister is like, the app's called Seconds. I think it's kind of like equivalent to like TikTok or Instagram. She's like an influencer on there, but they grew up in a very strict household where their mom controlled a lot of stuff. Their summers were spent in, is it Cape Cod? I don't think so. It's like this little beach town. And then growing up, Allie had this like forbidden friendship with Hudson, and they had like stolen moments together. And then there was a horrible accident where Allie's sister dies, and then there's like a kid involved in it too, trying to figure out who the kid's mom is. This happens very early in the book. Who the kid's mom is, who her dad is, and okay, well, I guess I need to tell you. The kid's mom is the dead sister of Allie. So then the daughter wants to have a relationship with her mom's family, and Allie's like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't even remember what the kid's name is. Her adoptive mom doesn't want her dancing. I don't know. It's a weird book of a lot of like backstabbing and going behind each other's backs. And a lot of secrets are had. And Hudson is keeping this huge secret from Allie, which turns out to not be a huge secret after all. That was kind of disappointing, and the lead up for it was not worth the payoff. Like the whole time we as the reader are kept in the dark about what Hudson is not telling Allie. And then once we do find out, I'm like, that's it? Like what? The whole adoption thing is kind of weird. I like learning about ballet, and I liked their dynamic of like there's fake dating in this book too, small town romance. I like the fake dating. That was a fun time. But again, overall, just kind of a flat book that didn't really do it for me. I don't know what I was expecting of it. Honestly, not much. Oh, okay. We're ending this off with a bang, and that is Little Stranger by Lee Rivers. This is a dark taboo romance between step-siblings. I gave it 3.75 stars, which is not bad. This was a very short book. It was only 207 pages. There is a second book out. It's The Web of Silence duet. The second book is Little Liar. I haven't read that yet, and I'm not really in a rush to read it. The first book does wrap up very nicely, and you don't need to read the second book. I think it's just like a continuation of like a background plot, if that makes sense. But you can definitely just read the first one and be done. Anyways, we follow, I'm so bad with names. Oh yeah, Olivia and Malachi. So we start off the book with Olivia's POV. She's 7. She was adopted by this really rich, cushy family, and then they adopt 8-year-old Malachi. And they were raised together from the time they were 7 and 8 till 18, 19, so like 10 years, I think. And they never had a normal relationship. They were always like pretty touchy, in weird ways at a young age, like kisses on the cheek, and like would sleep in each other's bed, but it wasn't weird when they were young. They were just very close siblings. Malachi was very protective over her. Malachi also doesn't speak, he signs. And then the older they get, he has some more aggressive outbursts. He wants to spend more time with her. They always continue to sleep in the same beds and like sneak behind their parents' back, because their parents are kind of like a little bit suspicious, but not super over the top, until one day Malachi snaps and then shit happens. Check your trigger warnings, because there is a scene with a dead body and blood. Not to the dead body, but just on top. It's not even a dead body. Like, come on, I'm sorry. How dare I say a dying body? If that makes it any better, a dying body. It's not dead. But it was a fun book. I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah, I just didn't really think of them as step siblings, to be honest. Oh yeah, because, so yeah, something happens, and then Olivia calls the cops and gets Malachi arrested, and he's in jail for 8 years, and throughout those 8 years they had no contact. And then he gets released and needs to find her to get revenge. I've never read a book like that. But yeah, I just didn't really think of them as siblings. I don't know why, there's just no connection there. They did call each other like brother and sister somewhat often, so, but I kind of just like blocked it out. Yeah, it was so not cute, but fun. Intense, and there's a lot of shit that happens where it's like, okay, check your trigger warnings. I don't know why it didn't bother me as much as I thought it might. I think because it was so unhinged, I just couldn't make sense of it, if that makes sense. Like, it was just so unhinged and so off the rails. I'm like, yeah, there's no way this would ever happen. So I had a hard time like putting myself in the story. There were some cutesy little moments, but for the most part, batshit crazy. but a good time. Yeah, hell yeah. Anyways, those are all of the books I read in the last 2 months. It was an okay month. I started off this video being like, oh, I only read shit books, like they were all awful. And now I'm like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. That's why I like doing these, because then it like reminds me of some of the books I read, and that my memory does sometimes fail me, and sometimes they're better than I initially think. Anyways, I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!